What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another episode. And man, it is unbelievable how fast time flies when you're having fun. Yeah, can you believe this is my birthday episode, which actually signals this is a 1 year. It's been 1 year, Grant.
Oh my goodness.
We've been together for 1 year.
I don't know how you've lasted this long. No, congratulations though, man. That's worth celebrating.
Isn't that crazy? That's awesome. So I was thinking about it the other day as it was coming up. Well, obviously it's my birthday, so you can't forget it. And literally last year was on my birthday when we did our first episode here at the Speakeasy Podcast Studio. So worth mentioning. It's been a phenomenal 1 year of just growth with Coffee and Grit, and it's been awesome. So we are celebrating today. I have a phenomenal local entrepreneur here to Brighton. And, you know, every time I've ever described Dan and his wife, Anna, it's been just, they have so much heart. They have so much caring and feeling and empathy and energy, and you can just see it. There's so much light there. And so you all know how I love how entrepreneurs, how businesses and people can create their businesses and align with their purpose, their passion, who they are as people. And so I love how their businesses plural, are around heart, around light. It completely describes everything I think of when I see them. And so without further ado, it's my pleasure to have on this year anniversary episode, Dan Oginsky on Coffee and Grit. Dan, welcome to the studio.
All right. I'm excited. Thanks for having me. Is today your birthday? Not just the podcast.
Tomorrow's my birthday. So you know how a year goes, it's like the day. Yeah.
Right.
So tomorrow, 44.
Happy birthday.
I know your birthday was it 2 weeks ago?
I think it was last week, Monday.
Last week. So big birthday?
It was 50. Yeah. So I guess that makes us both Taurus.
Yeah, I'm Gemini. I just had the cutoff. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, happy birthday.
By 2 days. But what's really cool is every time I've connected with somebody really well, and then I find out they're born in May, it's like, I just really connect well with people that were born in May. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I think we're just awesome people.
I would say so. You are for sure.
Thanks. I appreciate that. It's been awesome. Really, it's crazy. I started doing the workshops at the Lighthouse back last February, January, somewhere around there. So getting to know you and Anna even deeper. But I know your story, but how did you get started? And, I guess even what businesses do you own? What are you doing right now? And
Sure. Well, Anna and I own and operate Brighton Lighthouse and All Heart Garage in Brighton. Those spaces and companies are part of a larger company we call Hartmonic. It also consists of Anna's healing arts practice called Heart Connected, an art gallery in Leland called Main Street Gallery, and we have a vacation rental home in Leland too that we call Warm Hearted Home. So all those things together are Hartmonic. And the name Hartmonic, you described us pretty accurately in some ways, just being very heart-centered. And for Anna and me, and Anna's my wife, for people who don't know, being from the heart between the two of us is a little different, where she's very heart-centered, heart-oriented. I always say she's the, nice person part of our couple. I mean, I'm nice too, but people really enjoy being around her and in her presence. She's very peaceful and has a warm heart. Whereas I am someone who puts all of my heart into the things I really dedicate myself to.
Uh-huh.
And the name Hartmonic has a little bit of an origin in the movie Jerry Maguire, where Rod Tidwell gets mad at Jerry and throws his bags down and says, "I'm all heart, MFer," And a long time ago, I sketched on a piece of graph paper all these boxes that has essentially become Hartmonic, but the top box said All Heart Mofo prizes. But we came up with a different name, and what it means is we see ourselves as stewards of infrastructure that help people tune into their inner wisdom and follow their heart. And when you get to do that, it makes this beautiful music like a harmony. So that's harmonic. So those are all the parts of our. Thank you. Those are all the parts of our business, and the origins of all of what we're doing. We met in college. We dated in college. Got married a couple of years after we graduated from college. And long ago, we would dream of a day where we'd have this place, almost like an inn. Maybe it was on a bluff overlooking Lake Michigan. And it was a place where we hosted people and just made it pretty and made people warm and welcome. And Anna went to graduate school and got a master's of social work degree. I'm a lawyer by background, but she really had this idea. She never practiced at social work after graduating because she chose to stay home with our kids when they were young. Mm-hmm. But she had this idea of creating space for people. And I think a lot of what she does, especially for women, creating space where people can hear their inner guide and hear what that says and figure out ways to follow that. And she wanted to create something where you'd have like a weekend retreat and you're doing art and reflective exercises mixed with good food and music and different things. And she started that as long ago as 2012. Meanwhile, I was working in a corporate job, going from lawyer to a business executive, and enjoyed it for a long time. But I'm very left and right brained in a way. There's a part of me that's very analytical and linear. The other side of me, there's an artist in me. And that went into hibernation when I went to law school. And over time, working in my corporate job, it started to get restless and wanted to, have its say. And yeah, at some point I started this thought was percolating in my mind, where I started to wonder, what if I could spend more time around things I thought were cool with people I enjoyed more being with, and figure out a way to make a business out of that. And, fast forward a few years after that, and what is now Brighton Lighthouse went up for sale. At the time, we were looking for a place where Anna could do Heart Connected outside of her home. I was looking for a garage where I could work on cars. The house was in pretty bad shape and relatively small at the time, but it's on a 2-acre parcel. And
what year was this house built?
1860.
Okay.
It's a house that was built in 1860, and I drove by it every day on the way to work and back and everything. And it's beautiful. And so we stopped by to look at it. But like I said, I walked in and my first thought was immediately, this won't work. It's too small. Needs a lot of work. Meanwhile, I think Anna's in the backyard, enjoying the backyard, and immediately thought, this is great. I think this...
She fell in love out in the backyard.
Yeah. But it wasn't until I was standing in what used to be the garage with my arms crossed, shaking my head no, and a picture popped into my head, and I thought, if we invest in the property, we can bring it back to life, do a really cool historical renovation, and add to it to do lots of cool things. So we did. We embarked on that journey. It took us 4 years to complete that project, but we opened in February 2021. And so now what it is a space where we have lots of programming, and that's kind of the, flowing from Heart Connected. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of programming that ranges from professional development to personal development, wellness, focus on wellness, and also like physical movement and different things like that. It's also a space where people have their offices. It's a co-working facility. People have meetings there. People have events there. We've had 6 or 7 weddings there, actually.
Wow.
So the idea is, really the main idea is we wanted to create a place that just was beautiful and really felt great to be there, and you can use it for so many things. So we did that, and that has been going really well. And then in 2020, remember I mentioned I was looking for a place to have a garage.
I love this part of the story, so I was going to interrupt and ask this question.
I was part of the motivation for Brighton Lighthouse was I was going to have a garage. Well, that doesn't exist there. That's where people have, baby showers, wedding showers.
I've done my
where you have taught your
events
exactly. You've done your programs or your classes. So and it's more suited for that. So the idea of someday having my garage went back into the wish list or someday.
because it's too beautiful to put oil. It's too beautiful to put oil on this ground,
and it would totally not fit there with what we're doing now. So that was a good call. But my dad unfortunately passed away in 2020, and he's a mechanic. He had 4 garages filled with all kind, like 20 cars on the property, parts, tools, all kinds of things, and a lot of which I wanted to keep, including the Chevelle that he and I built together when I was in high school. So I went trying to figure that out. It's hard to find a pole barn that, you can buy, or buy land you can just build a pole barn on. But there was commercial property available, so I looked at the permitted uses, and in that, looking at the permitted uses and thinking about what I was needing and what our business really could use, those things wrapped together into expanding our business with All Heart Garage. So we have this building on Rickett Road in Brighton. It's the Hartmonic building, but inside there is All Heart Garage, which is it's a co-warehouse facility. So we have a warehouse that is divided into 7 storage units. And it's really built for small businesses that have a need for storing some equipment or some inventory with access to some office space to work. That is kind of the main purpose of the building.
Yeah.
And then the office space too. If you're a member of Brighton Lighthouse, now it's a community membership, so you can work in both spaces. And I would say All Heart Garage, whereas it's almost like a mullet, the two facilities. Brighton Lighthouse is more social. I mean, people work there.
There's a party in the back.
Yeah, it's the party in the back. It tends to be more social. There's a lot more different things going on there. All Heart Garage tends to be more business in the front. We have, cubicles that we call work bays and a conference room, and people who work there are, it's a little more office environment for there. We've got a couple of residents there who so far are using those storage units, and they love it. And they have their stuff stored there. They can come and go and get what they need. We have one resident called the Rustic Hut, and they make wooden furniture. So they're using the storage unit to store their furniture after it's made before it gets shipped out.
Oh, yeah.
But they're also using space to take photographs for marketing purposes. And that works really well. Another one is ATA Residential Solutions. They're home builders and do additions and renovations. So they have equipment and tools stored there. But they work in the office, and they have meetings in the conference room. And I was really excited the other day. They said they've been closing more deals meeting in that conference room at All Heart Garage than they used to in the past. So, and that's part of what's
That's
amazing.
A great testimonial.
Yeah, and it's part of what I love about what we're doing. Like I said, there's something about infrastructure and being a part of helping people get to where they're trying to go that I really love. And that's kind of what we get to do with our business, and that's the point of it. So we're having a great time, and it's a lot of fun stuff going on.
When you talked about earlier about being an artist, right? And
yes,
some people, you're describing to me about the workbench or the conference room table.
Yes. So All Heart Garage has a garage theme. The building, it's interesting. Brighton Lighthouse and All Heart Garage both, or the Hartmonic building, they're both buildings that we created and built, and they have a theme. And looking back, especially at both buildings, but Brighton Lighthouse, it was like an art project to me on the level of detail that we put into it, and the way I drove the people helping us probably drove them crazy quite a bit. I mean, I think they loved my passion for the project and how much I cared and what we put into it. But I don't think I was always easy to work with, because it was, like I said, there's an artist in me,
into it.
And I'm not painting on canvas. I'm building a building.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of energy we're putting into it. So All Heart Garage, I literally did a Google search for vintage service station and looked at the images with the architect and found one and said, let's make it look like that. So from the outside, that's why it has this 3-stripe awning.
Yeah.
Decorative awning on it, because it's built to look like a vintage service station to make it cool. You know,
that's super cool.
Part of what we're doing is we have a chance to build something. Let's make it beautiful and interesting. And on the inside, it's a garage theme. So instead of file cabinets, we have toolboxes and different things like that. Well, I wanted a conference table that was bench height and looked like a workbench, but actual workbenches have their legs at the corners, so you can't quite sit under it. So we know a gentleman who's helped us with metalworking and making pieces for us at Brighton Lighthouse. Well, he made this conference table for us. We call it our collaboration table. It's bench height. It's big. It's like 10 feet long, 4 feet wide, and looks like a workbench. And it's beautiful, you know?
That's super cool.
So,
well, and it's that stuff that adds the value. And you talk about like the resident that said we were closing down more deals, but could you imagine bring your clients into that kind of an atmosphere?
Well, I'm a believer that, and that has really fed how we've approached these projects. I very much believe, and I think because I'm sensitive to it, but I very much believe that aesthetics and the daylight in a room and the look and feel of materials, it affects how you feel. And it's somewhat of an obvious point, but there's an energy there that I take very seriously. So, you know, some of the idea about the way we built both places, like I said, is trying to create a place that is beautiful and cool and exciting, but also very functional. I very much believe in a concept of art and function mixed together. And that's what we've tried to do with these spaces. And I think it does affect how you feel when you're in the space and when you're working there or doing other things. And I think it adds a positive vibe to whatever you're, you know, trying to get done.
It's like the lighthouse, right? It's bringing that light and that energy.
Yes.
And whenever I hear people talking about their experience at the lighthouse, it's always consistent in the sense of that culture and that sense of being in welcomeness and togetherness.
What I've heard people comment on are two things, and they both count for a lot. One is the structure and the grounds themselves, you know, the physical, what you see. It's beautiful, and it's maybe not everybody's cup of tea, but for the most part,
it's beautiful.
What I hear from people is they really love it. And my wife, you know, Ann and I are very gratified to hear that. So that's one aspect of it. And I will tell you, and I really learned this when my dad and I built that Chevelle together when I was in high school. It was kind of my first big example of how every really minute detail that you're working on, that is the key to creating an impressive overall effect. People don't notice the details explicitly, but you feel it, and it comes through looking at the overall result or the overall picture. The key to that is all the little details are done the right way, and it adds up to this effect. And I think that's what we've so far accomplished there and continue to work on. The other part of it, though, based on what some people have said to us, and I'm very happy to hear this, I think there's a warmth to the environment. There's a warmth to the atmosphere there that is partly, you know, the building and the grounds, but it's also the people. And I think that gets back to the being heart-centered and warmth. And that's what we hope to have there.
You're attracting the right people in, or you're attracting your tribe, really. I
think so. And I think it probably, hopefully, starts with us. And by the way, people who know me, like, I'm not always warm, and I'll put it this way, I have an intensity that hopefully when I'm managing it right or just in the right mood comes across as this nourishing warmth. And I know that I can be that way sometimes, but there's other times when it's kind of like time to really get it done.
Yeah.
Or my kids need to learn a particularly important principle that that intensity burns a little more hot. But
they're back in bed with the shower running.
A lot of that comes from Anna too. I mean, that's I can't say enough. That's why I chose to live my life with her, because being around her just makes me feel better. And I don't think it's just us. I don't think it's that we've necessarily attracted it. I just, for whatever reason, people who are attracted to being in that space are good people and warm people, and there's a good culture there. Of my one principle that I express sometimes, and we're always living it, is people are here to be productive. And if there's one golden rule to follow while you're in the space, is do what you got to do, but also behave in a way that it allows the space to be productive for other people. Mm-hmm. And that has probably been one of the most rewarding parts of owning and operating Brighton Lighthouse and All Heart Garage, is watching people be good people, sharing space together and caring about each other and being respectful of what they're trying to do. You know, one of the great things that's kind of emerged with All Heart Garage is it's in some ways very self-sustaining, and the people who work there, you know, one gets up to make coffee. Hey, I'm making some coffee. You want some? And it just kind of runs on its own. That's very cool, because for whatever reason, I want badly for the world to be a good place and for people to be good to each other. And we all are, including me, like challenged in so many ways to be the people we want to be all the time, and to make the world what we want it to be. It's just great to see examples of people really being there for each other. That means a lot to me. So that's been very rewarding.
Well, it's awesome because you said, like you said, it starts with you and Anna, but at the same time, you two are people too. But when you surround yourselves around these other incredible people, they probably pick you up sometimes too.
Absolutely, for sure. And I try to learn from other people. I am, for example, by nature, especially when I was younger, probably a lot more introverted. And, you know, again, I grew up working in the garage with my dad as a mechanic, and kind of a way to solve problems is to pick up a hammer and try to smash it. You know, that's natural. But I have been lucky, starting in college, for example, meeting people and becoming friends with people who, a lot of their approach to people in life is making it fun. Mm-hmm. Well, that's very important for me, because by nature, you know, my strength or my go-to place is, we got to get over the hill. Let's work, you know. But a lot of times, if you need a team of people, it takes a group of people. I've learned from others, and I try to live this too. If you make it fun, it brings more people to the party. And, you know, you can't tell people what needs to be done as much as it works a lot better if you make it fun and people want to do it.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So I learned
versus you driving like, no, it's got to get done.
right. So, and that's definitely true at Brighton Lighthouse and All Heart Garage. We have, if you count them all up, about 50 people who are directly a part of our community. And yeah, there's lots to learn from there. And yes, they pick us up, and we have inspiring moments, and not just that direct community, but the people who have their own meetings or their own events, or like you teaching your class there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of inspiration in that, and it's a big pick me up, especially watching how much people care about good things that they're trying to do. It is very inspiring, and it's a constant affirmation and pick me up for sure.
Do you think the artist inside you, like the passion for building, does that tie back directly to that time in the garage with your dad?
I think that experience with my dad helped facilitate a way to express it. It, for me, is innate. Mm-hmm. Almost to the point of, especially the last few years, some big changes have happened in my life, and there have been times where my head is almost screaming, And if we're talking to entrepreneurs and people, I got to tell you, another thing I'm so inspired by is knowing people who take the risks they do because they have a passion. Like, and I don't know what risks you're taking, but I assume you are. And
Yeah.
it's a...
Yeah. Yep.
Would you like to talk about those, Jason?
I mean, any entrepreneur that's,
Right.
putting it all. Yeah.
And it's inspiring to see what people are willing to risk because they have a need to try to build something. And over the last few years, I've had my path has been evolving, and there have been cases where lots of times where my head is almost screaming like, do the reasonable thing, but this force is pulling me from my gut out somewhere, and I'm not even sure where, but it's pulling me. And I'm looking back at it, and it's, I don't want to sound glib or like things aren't this easy. Actually, it's been very hard in some ways. But it's almost like, I don't know that I've made choices as much as just decided to have faith in this energy that's pulling me.
Yes.
Because looking at, I had a corporate job, doing very well. And if you had told me when I was a kid that I'd be in this position, I'd been like, I've achieved all my dreams. But something else wanted to manifest. And so it's kind of pulled at me. And I would say that for me, if I think back, it's just how I'm wired. It's been innate since I was a kid, and being the artist. Just a quick little story, but it's the cross I bear. My older brother was a tremendous, and still is, he's a tremendous athlete, like an all-state athlete and good-looking kid and top 10 in his class. He's a, hard act to follow, and that certainly motivated me to try hard. But I'll never forget the day I started sketching in a book, drawing a bird. And I thought, Robert can't do this. Ooh. Mom will think this is cool.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, but I found and it wasn't because I was trying to do something he couldn't do. It was just in me that kind of accelerated it perhaps, or helped me locate that. But it's something I have, as I've grown older, just realized it's part of my wiring, and I have this energy in me. I think what I've more learned about over the last several years too is you kind of assume the things you feel, everyone feels that. And what I've realized is not
everybody feels that way.
Not everyone feels that way. And actually, and I would say you and me and Anna and some other folks, like, it's actually a small population of people. Mm-hmm. And as much as we might like to say we're making a choice to take risks and stuff, isn't it often the case that your head might be trying to hold you back, but your gut, or however you feel it, is pulling you towards something?
That's absolutely how I feel.
And I'm so impressed by people who let themselves have faith in that, because I think people take much bigger risks than we have to give in to that energy and follow that path. And I'm very impressed by people doing that, which has been also another incredibly rewarding part of the last few years is living my life more surrounded by people taking risks to build things and add goodness to the world. Mm-hmm. And I feel so much more centered and comfortable in my skin doing that. And
versus then going to work and not really having a choice of who you're around.
Yeah. And
no offense to the people that work.
No, I worked with it for a great company, worked with great people, and I learned a lot. And for a long time, really had a passion for it. But yeah, there was at some point this feeling that I'm getting up and going to a box, to sit at a box, to look at a box and be with all the other people in this box. And that's just a way I was feeling. That's not actual reality.
Yeah.
And in some ways, me saying that is, I don't know, probably doesn't sound appreciative of how lucky I was. But again, my dad is in my head almost yelling at me like, don't screw this up, because we humble beginnings, especially him. And we had pretty we had a pretty humble situation when I was growing up. So it was astonishing in a way, being in the position I was. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't, there was something empty inside, and there's trade-offs, there's trade-offs, but the life that Ann and I get to live now, there's lots of challenges still, and still raising our kids, and there's lots of wonderful stuff, lots of challenges, but I, one way or the other, just feel so much more like I'm where I'm supposed to be right now.
I had this young man ask me a couple of months ago when I knew when I decided to take the leap of faith to start my business, or when I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. And it was like kind of similar to what you're describing, in the sense of like that voice wouldn't go away, and it got so loud that I had no reason to be miserable with what I was doing. I can completely relate to what you're saying. It has nothing to do with those people. It has nothing to do with
Right.
with that job or being grateful for it. I'd wake up every day, and being the personal development person I was, I would kick myself my ass, be like, why do I not want to go to work today? Like,
Yes.
I've got these great people around me. I get to do whatever I want to do. I'm empowered to do, I'm empowered to go do what I need to do. And, but I really don't want to go.
No. I studied political theory in college at Michigan State. I was in James Madison College, and loved it, had a passion for it. And in that course of study, we read Tocqueville, and it made a big impression on me. And there's a couple of passages. Like, one is, if a man advances confidently in the direction of his dreams, he will meet with success unexpected in common hours. And then there's another one that's kind of famous in the movie Dead Poet Society, and I don't have that one memorized word for word. It's about, I went into the woods, to suck the marrow out of the bones of life. But the key part to me is, and to find that when I came to the end of life, that I had not, to avoid feeling like when I got to the end of life that I had not lived. This is a primary driver for me. I have really tried to dedicate myself to living life, not going through it, to the point where before I left for college, my dad sat me down and said, okay, when you get to college, you're going to study engineering. And I said, no, I'm going to study, political theory. And he talked about people flipping burgers at the corner because they were political science. And I had an argument with them. I said, look, I have to have a passion about what I'm doing. Because the truth is, this is another reality, is if I'm bored, I'm not good.
Yeah.
But when I'm excited, I'm at my best.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge difference. So that makes a big difference. But to your point, I had reached a point where I was waking up in the morning and kind of not, just wondering, how was I going to get through this day?
Yeah. And
that's so so much the opposite of how I'm dedicated to living my life, that something was wrong, and it had to be corrected, and it was, and here we are.
It's amazing. Where was that? I guess that final, it's time to go.
Honestly, I am so dedicated to making things work and figuring out how to make things work. I can't say that I fully...
There was one moment.
Had one moment, or was fully in control of making that choice and navigating all of that. It was almost, it just wasn't working anymore.
Yep.
And it was 2020 when COVID started, and 2020 was a pretty rough year. So it was almost like a breakup is how it turned out. But it was the thing that needed to happen. And I'm glad for it. And it was even before Brighton Lighthouse was done, before we opened. So it was all, the timing was probably right.
Right timing. Mm-hmm. Right. For me, it's like, I literally, that conversation I had with my wife, it was New Year's Eve, 2018. And she was like, what do you want to accomplish this year? And it was like, if I'm still at this job, this would have been a miserable year, I've got to find a way to make this jump. I just don't know how. And
Right.
literally my boss called me in the office. Like, she was like, hey, let's have a meeting at the end of the week, talk about the direction of the company. And I'm like, great. And then I'm like, Gracie, I feel like this is different than normal, because we normally have these conversations at the beginning of the year. I'm like, I feel like this is different. And I'd always told her, I was always like, told her what I wanted to do and
Sure.
where I was at. And so she pulled me in. She was like, I know you're miserable here and I know what you want to do. And so she pushed me out of the plane and gave
There you
me
go.
like a little like parachute and sent me on my way. And it's one of those things you constantly described here is, hey, I'm not saying there's not rough times. I'm not saying there's not like, fear and all that kind of stuff, but it's that being pulled, like that parachute open, and it's pulled me in these directions. Not saying there hasn't been bad times or worry or panic or any of that stuff, but it's pulled me.
Yeah, and I don't know if you get this philosophical on your podcast very often, but I will say, for a lot of reasons, 2020 was a very difficult year. My dad passed away that year. There was other things that kind of went on, and I don't think it was quite midlife crisis, but I'm about that age. But there was a lot of changes going on, and one of the good things was that I had a lot of time to do a lot of reflecting and processing. And one of the things that I thought that occurred to me, I kind of feel like life is a river. We're flowing through. We're almost maybe we're in a canoe, like paddling in the river of life that's flowing. And I observed that when the transition points happen in your life, and I think this was happening to me until something, broke and I was able to change. If you get too dedicated to the way things have been, you're not as open to moving forward through the transitions in your life, and you get stuck. And it's almost like the river is going through this tunnel, and if you
hit a dam.
You're trying too hard to hold on to what was, you get pinned against that wall rather than flowing through it. And I am very interested in history. You see that in Brighton Lighthouse. I love stories, but I love history. I'm very sentimental, but something has definitely changed for me, because while that's true, I have had this kind of affirmation, or more of a focus on thinking about life as being what's happening today, and what are we doing today to build towards the future. I've also gotten old enough where there's more road behind me than there used to be, and I think it's easy to get kind of attached to what was, but that can hold you back to embracing what can be.
Well, especially as we get older, a lot of times that people die before they die because they cling on to what's comfortable and what's safe.
Right. And in a lot of ways, the last few years has felt like making a choice to get off the sofa and leave the comfort of home, being under a blanket, watching TV, and going out into the woods on a hike. Because I've done a fair amount of that, with the Boy Scout troop that my sons were in, backpack camping. So You're carrying like 50 pounds in your back and hiking, 8-10 miles a day. And when you're on some of those hikes, you're thinking, why am I doing this?
Why am I doing this?
When it's raining and all of that. But we had this saying in Scouts, embrace the suck.
Yeah.
That's part of the journey. And again, it's a trade-off, but you're exposed to the elements. You're hungry, you're tired, you're wet, you're cold, and all of that. But what an amazing feeling it is to be out in the wild, moving, and everything you need, you're carrying it with you and on your back. And this is a metaphor for the, journey that Ann and I have been on, but that's some of the choices. You're taking risks to be less comfortable because there's something deeper, more important that you're pursuing. I've also had this feeling, realizing like the boxes that we build to make ourselves comfortable can become your cage. And I have this way of saying things severely, so if I say it that way, Anna's like, I don't like the way that sounds, but
this is my shit.
you get the point.
Yeah.
Right? It's the boxes you build for comfort can become your cage, and you can't get trapped by those things. And I have become a junkie for youth energy, not meaning like young as opposed to old, but more, going along with the concept of everything that's alive is growing, and you have to hurt a little bit to grow. There's friction there. There's moving beyond your comfort zone, but that's what life is you're pushing to grow. And I think what you just said is true. And I feel like I'm dedicated to always trying to grow, because that's where life is.
That's where life is. I didn't get much out of college. I didn't graduate. But I had this history professor. I'm a huge history guy too. I had this history professor, and he said these words that just always stick with me. And he was like, "The day that you stop learning and growing," he was like, "go home, go to your cabinet, pull the revolver out, put it in your mouth, and pull the trigger." And it was like the most violent thing. I was like, I didn't see that going there, but it always stuck with me. And it just, we're always growing, learning, evolving. And if we don't, we're dead before our death date.
Yeah. And I saw someone speaking on a show on TV, and she was saying a lot of things that made sense to me, but one of them was just talking about the world we live in with our technology and our devices and the services that people have invented, which, is all good and entrepreneurial in their own way. But there's so many things dedicated to rounding off the bumps in life. And it can suck you in too much to make things too easy on yourself. And it's important, I think, we remember that, I think it's important to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That is an important part of growing and having a freedom to really be the person you want to be. Is you have to embrace some level of discomfort. That can be a good thing for you.
It is, and it's as you go through that discomfort, it gets easier.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I think of a video game. You get to that. I remember being a kid. Growing up in the '90s. Super Mario Brothers, right? Like every level's harder, but then it's more rewarding as you beat it.
Yeah.
Right. And then you get to the next level, and it was then you go back and you play the level again. You play that level that you got stuck on over and over again. And you're beating it so easy.
Yep. Absolutely. And there's not only getting stronger and, being better at the things you're trying to do, but also just having that constitution or that resolve, having that belief. I tell you, the belief in yourself that you can do hard things is maybe one of the most valuable things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling a lot of stories about my dad, but I got to tell you, my mom, by the way, I need to give her credit too for what it's worth. She's also one of the hardest working people I know. Hard living in her household at times because she was always busy and expected us to be as well. But just an incredible person with a strong will and always working and stuff. But again, my dad was a mechanic, so we had cars around the yard that we had to push around and stuff. And I remember being young, and he'd say, "Here, push this." And we're talking like a giant.
These are cars, metal, right? Back in the day,
yeah. Like real metal, like a giant Cadillac or something. And he'd say, "Push that over there." And I remember pushing on it, and I didn't feel like I could, and he'd just keep looking at me. And it was just kind of like he didn't help. He didn't say okay. He didn't like criticize me, just kept looking at me. And there was this, then I just, there were times I just redoubled my efforts. And this is an interesting metaphor too, is trying to push a car like that. Like it feels like you can't do it, but all you have to do is get it started. Because once it starts rolling, it wants to it's inertia, right?
Yep.
So it gets easier, but you just got to go over that initial hump. And that belief that you can do it, even though your first try felt impossible. Developing the belief that you can overcome things that at first feel impossible is a superpower.
Yeah.
And I can't say I possess that all the time, but sometimes I do, and it makes a big difference.
That's a huge lesson that your dad taught.
Yes.
It's fun. We don't think what and who even knows if our parents even mean the lessons they teach us,
I know.
Like who knows what he was thinking as he's staring at you, but he basically willed you to figure it out.
And it's amazing too. My wife's parents, Anna's mom is a nurse, and she was educated to be a nurse, but her dad was a sheet metal worker. Mine was a mechanic. My mom, was a stay-at-home mom until my parents divorced. And then her first job was making donut holes at a supermarket, and then changed jobs and ended up being a salesperson for a box company and doing pretty well at that. But my parents were 18 and 19 years old when I was born. And it's incredible to think how crazy I felt at times raising my young kids, and they were so much younger than me.
It's like, sometimes at 44, I'm like, am I doing this right?
I know. And they didn't go to college. They don't have the education that Ann and I do, or like I said, Anna's mom went to college and is a nurse, but otherwise, point being that it's amazing. You don't necessarily need formal education to be a wise person dispensing, wisdom. And I'm always impressed by, you think about people generally, like the things we idolize in this society to me are pretty crazy. The things that get attention. It's really bad with the social media platforms and the things that garner attention. But to me, what I'm impressed by are people, it's a quiet thing, but the miracles that people are pulling off every day, choosing to get up, doing the things they have to do to take care of their kids, make a nice home, even though it can be really hard. And they're doing that all the time. And in the meantime, it sounds like you had that too, just little drops of wisdom in these places. I'll do another quick one. My dad, when I had my learner's permit to drive, we did some pretty crazy things, but to him it wasn't crazy. It was just normal. He had me drive with him, and it was this is in the 80s, by the way, so at this point it was an older car.
Yeah.
But it was a 1977 Cadillac Barritz. It was maybe one of the largest cars I've ever seen, and the fenders like swooped up and like a wave rolling in the ocean. And I got in that thing, and it felt like the car was an inch off the ground. So we're driving in this thing, and I'm just steering, and it's all over the road because I'm so intimidated by it, and it feels like it has no traction. And I'll never forget him saying, "Don't look at the hood ornament. Look down at the end of the road." And as soon as I did, the car went from side to side to straight as an arrow. And think about that perspective. When you're looking right in front of you, you're all over the place. But if you're looking down the road, it puts things into perspective. And it's really, another interesting thing is just because a lot's happened in the last few years for me. In the midst of it, I can tell you a lot of it has felt like, some of it has felt chaotic. And I'm talking like not just our businesses, but doing this while we're still raising our kids and got parent issues and just all kinds of things. It feels chaotic, and there's ups and downs, and almost like feelings of whether this is working are impacted by my mood that day, which can be affected by how much sleep did I get? Did I eat carbs or actual like lean protein, stuff like that. And it feels chaotic. But when I stand back from it and think about how the last few years have gone, really, I've thought, if you wrote this out as a story and gave it to me to read, I would say that's incredible.
That's incredible.
But in the middle of it, it's like being in a storm.
Yeah.
But looking at it from a distance, it's looks perfectly like it was always planned that way.
It's like you write down your experiences and share it with somebody. They're like, "Cry me a river."
Right. So perspective counts for a lot.
Going back to it's taking those steps, right? Going back to that car and talking about like people living life, and whether you find your happiness or not, or you create those cages. That's such a powerful visual to you. I picture you're creating these walls of safety, and then all of a sudden you put that top over and you latch it. Now you're trapped and you can't get out.
Right. And it's just a lot depends on your priorities. And those priorities, what I've come to understand better is it depends on your wiring. Mm-hmm. People are wired different ways. That's going to mean they want different things. They're going to have different priorities. And so, people build lives, hopefully, to suit them better. But if I think you and I and probably a lot of people who listen to your podcast, our wiring is probably a few different things. We want to build things. We want change to some extent, but we want to, be enterprising and have more freedom and, add something to this world. Kind of have a bigger purpose in mind, if I could say so. So it depends on how you're wired, but if you're wired that way or have any inspiration that way, got to be careful about letting comfort trap you in into it.
And how do you start? You take the steps. You probably don't have all the answers. You don't know how to move that car.
Right.
It's a heavy car, right? So you start pushing and you move it inch by inch by inch, and you figure it out along the way.
And I will say that our experience has been, there's certainly elements of that. And I just got, might have been last night, maybe the night before, but literally thinking about how much some of what we've been doing is comparable to, I have a picture of me jumping off the back of my boat into a lake, which I love to do that. But it's comparable, like jumping off of the dock or the boat into the water.
Mm-hmm.
You can swim. Do you, are you going to land firmly on ground or something, or know what's going to happen? No, like, we don't have answers for these things, but there are a lot of, and I would say it's more than just jumping off the back of your boat or a dock, but it is like jumping into the water and then having to get somewhere. Like, you don't know how that's going to happen, but if you can swim, you get in and then figure it out. There's a lot like that.
It's a lot like that. And you think about, okay, so you can look down and see that you're not jumping into a gravel pit, right? There's water there. It's not shallow. You can see that you're, so you have a little bit of a scope on things, and then, you can swim. So you jump in with that faith of you're going to hit water, and then you can rely on yourself to swim from there.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point. No one's going to jump into a gravel pit. You shouldn't do that.
Don't do it. It's going to hurt.
Right. So you look in the water, make sure there's not like logs or, you're not putting yourself in danger, but you're still taking a leap of faith because you don't have the same level of control if you were just standing on the ground. And you have to rely more on your ability to swim in the water and figure out where you want to go with that. Because you can't, if you wait to figure out all the answers, you're going to stand in one space.
Frozen. Probably trapped in your cage.
I'm a believer in, the way I've operated is I have a feeling, and that becomes a picture in my head of a place I'm trying to get to. And then I start to make a plan how to get there. Some of that is like, I think Dwight Eisenhower is attributed to say, plans are useless, but planning is essential. Yeah. But there's some element of, you can plan so much, but it's more just blocking out generally. But then you got to start going.
Yep.
Because the process of getting there is an education itself, and you learn and adapt, right?
Yeah.
So you can't know all the answers. You got to have faith that you're going to be able to figure it out.
Being an entrepreneur, if you are obsessed with having a plan that's going to work out of the gates, you're not meant for this. Right. Because you have a plan, you take it to market, and it adjusts, and you figure out your limitations to that plan because you start to learn your customer better, right?
Yes.
You start to learn the people that you're serving and realizing maybe that idea was focused around what I wanted or what excited me. Where's that meet in the middle?
I don't think there's any question in a really practical sense. That's a very good point. That's something I've definitely experienced and been learning more about, is the distance between my ideas and what I think people would love and what they actually want. Not that it's been that far off, but there's definitely been things where I thought, oh, this would be really cool. And it's not always the case that people immediately respond to it. So, obviously hearing people, listening, is a critical part of providing value, but some of it is you won't know until you try things.
Yeah.
But being open to the idea that I tried something, it was good to some extent, but we can adapt. That helps you find what people are looking for. And I very much believe, in the power of a value proposition. A lot of what we do is somewhat mission driven, not in a religious sense, but in the sense of wanting to add goodness to the world.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm also a capitalist in this sense that if people are willing to pay for what you're providing, not in all cases, like doesn't make it good, but if you're trying to provide something good to people, the fact that they're willing to pay for it is an indication that they find value in it.
Yeah. Yes.
And if you don't have customers for it, even though you think it's good, it's not providing value to people enough. So that gives you an incentive to keep working at it.
Yep.
To make it truly what people need,
Absolutely.
It's a good signal.
It's a good signal. The people are going to tell you, what they like and what they don't.
Exactly.
That's amazing. So to kind of wrap things up, we talked about the other day, all kinds of different events you have going on between, so what are some things you have coming up?
Oh, well, the things we just wrapped up, we had an art exhibition at Brighton Lighthouse on May 5th. That was really cool. That'll probably become an annual thing.
That's tying in your art gallery, right?
Yes. So we took art from Main Street Gallery, have it hanging in Brighton Lighthouse now, and it's for sale, but it also beautifies the space. And we wanted to have an event to kind of show that off. And we invited the Brighton Art Guild and Art Ventures and the Artisans Bench. And I have a lot of Artisans Bench pieces at Brighton Lighthouse already. And we had food and music, and more than 100 people showed up for that. It was really cool. This past week on Friday, we had our inaugural Women's Wellness Advance. Anna led that, worked with a team to plan it with Kelly Luck, our operations chief. The two of them worked really hard at it. It was those two and 10 of our members put on this day that 40 women signed up to attend.
Wow.
And spent the day focusing on and learning about physical, mental, and emotional wellness.
Wow.
And it was beautiful. So those are a couple of really cool things. I think looking forward, I know what's coming up is in June, we have a couple different camps that are geared towards kids. One is gives an ability for kids to do art, and I think some of that has been in the past, and I think that's the way it is this summer too. Some of it is experiencing nature, like using the property to experience nature, and then they're making art with nature. And then another one is geared towards building, skills in kids for success, and those have been very popular. So those are coming up in June. Really recommend people check out our website and our for programs. To look for those. And then we have other programs for adults that are geared towards, like I said, personal and professional development. There's a lot of good stuff there. Looking ahead a little further down the road, I'm really excited about this. We'll be doing our fall Festivus the last weekend of October.
Oh.
I'm totally stealing the Festivus word from Seinfeld.
I'm like, hell yeah, I need to know more about this. Yeah.
And some of it is Ann and I both love autumn. And just that feeling of the fall. And when we first opened in 2021, we did more of a full weekend. Last year, we just did a member event. It was more scaled down because I think scheduling conflicts.
Okay.
But this year, it's going to be the biggest fall Festivus we've had yet. And it's something we would like to be an annual tradition. So it'll be the last week of October. Thursday night, we'll have a member event, which we make a big deal about. Our biggest dressed up member event where we have like a big dinner and we put like a bonfire out and hang out and then have dinner and stuff. Very cool. And then Friday night, we're going to have kind of an open to the public happy hour type of thing. Saturday, and this is what we did in 2021. We're doing this, just missed last year, but it'll be an annual thing. I'll be giving haunted history tours, where we're going to, like we did in 2021, if you're at Brighton Lighthouse at night, it's dark and all the exit signs are red. It already feels pretty spooky.
Yeah.
We dressed it up and decorated it. And then I walked people around telling stories that are 98% true. I embellished a little bit, and I let people guess which parts I embellished. And it's not like gory or anything like that, but they're real stories that I guess give you a sense of spirits among us.
Yeah.
It's very cool. And so Saturday will be kind of earlier on. We'll probably have some things for kids to do too, because earlier in the late afternoon or early evening can be a little more kid oriented. As it gets later, it'll probably be more adult oriented.
Yeah.
And then on Sunday will be a day of service, and that is coming together still. But I think we'll be working with Yoga Strong Foundation that Ashley Watterson founded and is setting up. We'll be working together to do a number of things that benefit different nonprofit organizations.
That's super cool.
So I think there will be yoga there, kind of a focus on yoga in one part. There will be an opportunity for food donations to benefit Bountiful Harvest. There will be a blanket making that I think goes to support La Casa.
Okay.
And there's another part that I'm blanking on right now. But I think we're going to set it up so there's different nonprofit organizations you can benefit by doing really cool stuff while you're there. So it'll be a whole weekend of things that we have going on that are largely centered around celebrating harvest season. I'm really excited about that.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's a great schedule. I love the Festivus. That sounds like an awesome time.
Right, exactly.
Is there airing of grievances?
What's that?
Is there going to be an airing of grievances?
Probably. At least setting up for it, maybe. I don't know if I can help myself.
Love Seinfeld.
I know.
Man, Dan, this has been so awesome. Thank you so much for coming down, sharing your story, sharing so much amazing wisdom with the audience. Like this is, drilling down and like really centering a business around your heart, around your passions, and building that, like building the life that you want.
And Anna, it's really
Anna, yeah.
And that's one of the best parts is doing it together. It has its challenges, working with your spouse, but that's really probably the deepest reward I have is doing this together and building this with her, and so much of her energy is in it. So it's really us together, and I don't think it could be what it is without the yin and yang of the energy that we bring to it. There's a mix of it. So
well, you described it so well at the beginning, where
yeah.
like she has such a heart on the outside, right. And then you're like this heart for the purpose, right? Or for
exactly
for the drive. And my wife, who is not a hugger, has said openly like, Anna's that person that I see her in public and I just want to hug her for some reason.
It's true. She changed things in my family. Not necessarily with my mom, but with my dad. Again, he's affectionate, but by the time I'm an adult and he is, and my brothers, we didn't really hug.
Yeah.
He's kind of a hulking, muscular man and working all the time. And it just wasn't how we did things. She and I started dating. She showed up. She gave I never forget, I think the first time she met him, she gave him this big hug. And her hugs really do kind of transmit this warmth. And I'll never forget my dad took a step back and said, "Oh, I really like that." And we all started hugging each other after that. It was it's pretty incredible.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it's a good memory.
I am so glad I shared the thing about hugging, because that's an incredible story.
Yeah.
Dan, thanks so much for coming down.
I can't thank you enough for giving me a chance to talk about myself. Everybody knows it's I maybe like it too much, but no,
I
seriously.
love your stories, man. It's great.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and I love what you're doing with your podcast, and listening to you talk about what you do with Work Consulting is amazing. And you have great stories too, so
thanks.
I'm glad we got a chance to chat.
Thanks, I appreciate it. That was awesome.
Hey, Jason. Hey,
Yep.
happy birthday.
Thank you. Oh, man.
All right, now we're done.